Chapter 3. Escape. The trial went slowly, so every now and then I had to borrow some money from the judge to give to Pap. Whenever he got the money, he got drunk and made a big commotion in town. Then he was thrown in jail. This happened again and again. He got to hanging around the widows so much that she told him if he didn't quit it, she would make trouble for him. This got the old man real angry, so he watched for me. One day in the spring he grabbed me. He took me up the river about 3 miles and crossed over to the Illinois shore where it was woody and deserted with no houses. We walked through the woods until we came to the old log cabin where we once lived. For the next few months we'd lived on the food we hunted and fished. Every once in a while Pap locked me in the cabin and went to the store to trade fish and game for whiskey. He'd fetch you home to get drunk. Then he'd lock the door at night and put the key under his head alongside his gun. But by and by, Pap got too handy with his belt when he got drunk, and I couldn't stand it. I was covered with welts. He got to going away a lot too, and would lock me in the cabin so I couldn't escape. Once he locked me in and I was gone for 3 days. I was terribly lonesome and scared. I thought maybe he had drowned, and I was sure I would never get out again. I had to figure out some way to escape. I had tried to get out of that cabin many a time, but I just couldn't figure out how. When Pap was away, he was pretty careful not to leave a knife or anything in the cabin for me to cut through the floor. The windows weren't big enough for even a dog to get through. The chimney was too narrow to climb up, and the door was made of thick, solid oak slabs. Finally, I found an old rusty saw with a broken handle. I fixed the handle and looked for a place to start sawing. There, behind a table at the far end of the cabin, was an old horse blanket nailed against the log wall. I got under the table, raised the blanket, and went to work sawing out a section of the big bottom log for me to escape through. Well, it was a long job, but I was getting towards the end when I heard Pap's gun in the woods. I got rid of the signs of my work, dropped a blanket over the hole, and hid my saw. Pretty soon Pap came in. He was in his usual mood, a bad one. He said he'd been downtown and everything was going wrong. His lawyer said the trial would take a long time and there'd be no money until the court made a decision. Meanwhile, the widow had been looking for me. She had sent a man to try to follow Pap, but Pap drove him off with his shotgun. After that, he threatened to hide me in another place where no one would find me. So, I decided that if I could keep Pap and the widow from trying to find me, then I would really be free. After we had dinner, Pap locked me up in the cabin and went back to town. I judged he wouldn't come back that night, so I waited until he had a good start. Then I pulled out my saw. Before he was on the other side of the river, the hole was finished and I was out. I knew where there was an old canoe tied up on the shore, so I took a sack of cornmeal, a side of bacon, some sugar, and coffee, and headed down to the river. I filled the canoe with string, matches, a tin cup, and some blankets. Then went back to the cabin and covered up the hole I had made. As part of my plan, I took Pap's shotgun from its hiding place, then went into the woods and shot a pig. I found Pap's axe and used it to smash the cabin door to bits. Next, I fetched the pig inside, cut open its throat, and let its blood make a trail wherever I dragged it. Then I pulled out some of my hair and stuck it and the axe on the cabin door. The whole thing looked like someone had hacked his way into the cabin, killed me, and dragged my body off somewhere. When it was dark, I moved the canoe down the river and waited under some willows for the moon to rise. I took a bite to eat, and by laid down in the canoe to smoke my pipe and figure out a plan. I knew the townspeople would drag the river for my body, but they would soon get tired of that. Maybe they would hunt for the robbers who broke into the cabin, but right now I needed to find some place to hide, so I decided to head for Jackson's Island. I knew the place pretty well. When the moon rose, I pushed off in the canoe, and soon I was on my way. It didn't take long to get to the island. Once I landed and tied up my canoe, I headed for the big log at the head of the island. From there, I could see way over town, 3 miles away. The lights were twinkling, and if I closed my eyes, I could almost see the widow Douglas inside the big house on the hill. There was a little gray in the sky now as dawn came on, so I stepped into the woods and lay down for a nap before breakfast.